Hello, it's Jo. Super excited today. I've had a fabric that I wasn't sure about from Minerva. I saw it online and I decided I needed to sew some more solid colour things, and I saw this linen viscose blend and I'm so pleased I bought it. I want to make the matcha top, but I know that I won't get that nice gather and drape off the shoulders if I don't have a fabric that's got some viscose in it. So I'm going to make the matcha top, and I'm going to use this fabric that has a really beautiful drape. And I think it's important to remember to sew some things with solid colours, because you can get a bit carried away making lots and lots of pattern things, and then you realise you've got a handmade wardrobe that doesn't go with anything else. So I'm really trying hard to put some solid colours in my wardrobe. So matcha is one, and I think I've shown you before, but I like to store all of my stuff for each project in a little organza bag. So now that one is all ready for me to sew another time, and I liked it so much that I had some more. So this is quite a dusky pink. It's not shiny, it's got a really nice matte cotton finish, and that's what I like about it. So I've got pink and I have Pietra pants. So I think I'm going to make some pink trousers, then I can wear all the pattern tops that I've made. So I'm making a solid colour top to wear with pattern skirts, and then I'm making solid colour bottoms to wear with pattern tops. So I'm hoping it's going to be a bit more of a wardrobe builder than just choosing really beautiful patterns and then realising that nothing goes with anything else. So those are coming up. Those are my next two projects. I've got a Pietra and a matcha. For those of you who are trying really hard to buy online with us but can't always tell the sort of fabric that you're looking at, I'm trying to show my outfits every week so that you can just sort of match the names to fabric. So this is a polyester crepe. It's got a really nice drape, so that neckline is cut on the bias, which means it rolls over really smoothly. It's great for a on-trend sort of full sleeve because it's not too stiff, but it's not transparent, so it's got really good possibilities for making a dress without having to line it, but then getting the flow of the dress. It gathers really well. So along here, I haven't got gathering on there, but on the shoulders I've got some gathering, and it doesn't pull any of the threads. So this is a polyester crepe, if that's the sort of drape that you're looking for. Today I've got another little kit that I'm going to show you, and I'm going to show you this through to the end. So this is it's not a new pattern, but it's one of those styles that doesn't really go out of fashion. It's a shell top. It gives you, although it looks quite similar, this one's got slightly more cut out arms. This one's got a squarer neckline. This one's got a close neckline if you wear jewellery with it. And this one's got sleeves. So there's a lot of options in there. I'm going to show you today how to hone your skills for darts and facings. So then you can start to really move into different blouse patterns. This one I'm wearing at the moment is from a vintage pattern, and it has a dart that goes all the way down here, and you see that dart sometimes on a vintage pattern. These have got small darts, I'm going to show you that, but the technique is the same. So we'll be working over at the cutting table quite a lot today. So if you're making a dart in something, then you're taking a little piece out of the side seam, and you don't want to take this dart right over the apex of your bust, because then what you're doing is you're taking fabric away from where you need the fullest amount of fabric. You're just taking a piece out of the side. So I'm going to mark these. I've made a little hole in the tissue paper, and then what I do is I use these little reinforcers, you know, you get them from stationers, to put around the holes on paper, and then I stick that on there, so I can make a hole and it doesn't get too big, and then it stops the paper ripping. So I've marked my dart here, then I'm going to turn the fabric over, mark the dart on the other side, and then we're going to mark them up with a ruler to get a nice straight line. I'm going to show you how to use tailor's tacks as well. I mean, I've used this pen. It's got a retractable piece of chalk in the end. It's great. It marks really well on fabric. We sell them at Minerva, and it's one of those tools you sort of invest in it and you never have to buy another one. So I'm going to mark those darts, line them up, and then I'm going to pop tailor's tacks in. So I've marked one side. I thought I'd show you tailor's tacks on the other side, but I did them with black and then I couldn't see them. So I've done this one with green. So you sew through the paper, through the 2 layers of fabric, and then when you peel them apart, you can see those threads inside, and you snip them and they mark where the darts are. So there's a dart point there with black thread that you might not be able to see, and then there's one here with green thread, and it's on the same place on the other side. So here's the dart marked. Now we're going to pinch it together and pin it. So you put the 2 chalked lines together, or your tailor's tacks together, and pin. And you're going to put 3 pins in. If you're not confident under the machine, you can tack that line so that you can really concentrate on getting a smooth dart. If not, if you want to leave the pins in and sew, make sure your pins are in the right direction for you to take them out as you're sewing. Okay, you always sew darts from the wide end to the narrowest point, and you start with a forwards and back stitch. You go forwards and back, and then you're going to follow the line, tacking or chalk, whichever you use, and you're going to very gradually take your line to the final point, and you only need to have 1 stitch. You need, towards the end, you need to be going 1 stitch at a time to gradually take the needle off the edge of the fabric, and as soon as it's off, you stop. You don't go forwards and backwards there. If you do a forward and backward stitch on the apex of your dart, you'll get like a really knotty, knobbly end, so you won't get a smooth finish on the right side. So you keep quite long threads on the apex, and then you just tie those off so that they don't come undone, and the other end won't come undone because you've gone forwards and backwards on that. Your dart needs to be a straight line. If at any point here you kink off, you won't get a clean dart. It needs to be an absolute straight line with a little tie at the end. If you have an internal dart, so if you have darts, you get them on a dress, on a waist seam, you need to still follow this little rule that you've learnt here. So you need to sew from the middle out towards the point, and then from the middle out towards the other point. And I'll show you that on a picture. For example, if you're trying to put darts here, where it goes from bust in at the waist and then out at the hip, then you will need to start your sewing in the middle and then out to that apex, and then in the middle and then out to the hip. If you start at one end and sew to the other, you'll get that knobbly end at one end of your dart. So you need to start in the middle and go out, and start in the middle and go out the other way. And because I only took 1 stitch off the end of the dart, I should have a really, really smooth finish to my dart. If I was too aggressive on the end of there and I nipped it off, then I would have a little pucker there, and I'm not trying to get that. I'm trying to get something really, really smooth. The dart at the back needs to be pointing downhill. So the flap of the dart goes down towards the hem. I'm going to repeat for the other side. So the darts are in, all of the sides are prepared, but now it's time to add the facings. And you don't add facings just on their own. You would add them to a little bit of interfacing so that you stiffen the material slightly. Mistake a lot of beginners make is they stiffen the fabric too much and then they get a really harsh line around their neck. You only need to use an interfacing that's as strong as the fabric that you're using, and then of course you'll get double strength from that. So there's a few different interfacings that we sell. This one is one of my favourites. It's a really, really light and frothy. It's very, very light. And so if you're working with something like viscose or georgette or chiffon, and you need to just interface a tiny little bit or a little bit round a neck, it doesn't affect the drape of the fabric. It gives it the stiffness that you need, but it doesn't spoil the neckline. So this neckline has got it on. So because it was quite a crepe that had an element of drape, I didn't want to take away that element of drape by putting too much interfacing on the back. So this is letting this neckline stand up enough to be an Audrey Hepburn collar, but still soft enough to complement the fabric. There's really thick ones. This one I used on the front of a coat. So there was buttons down the front. It was a woven jacquard fabric, and I needed something really firm to hold the straight front edge of the coat. But I wouldn't use this for anything else, not even a collar on a shirt. It's too stiff. You could use it in bag making to stiffen pockets and things, but that's a heavyweight one. And then in between I have a medium weight one, and I use this quite a lot as well. So I would use medium weight on a cotton, because the cotton is medium weight, and I would use that on a collar, a grandad collar, or a normal collar, or to face the edge of pockets to stop pockets bagging out. So that one is a medium weight fabric interfacing, so it's a medium weight interfacing. So you want to put the same interfacing on the same sort of gauge of fabric. One that I've been using just lately is a woven interface. So instead of it being a synthetic fabric, it looks like a piece of cotton. So this is medium weight, and I used it on other parts of my coat where I wanted it to be, in the collar I used it because the material was so thick that I didn't need a really thick interfacing on it. I just needed something to help the collar turn and roll over. A little bit more expensive woven interfacing, but I have started using it a lot more. It does give a really good finish. So we sell a lot of interfacing, so have a look online, but try not to go too stiff for the fabric that you're using. Of course, the trick with interfacing is to make sure that you don't get a load of glue all over your iron. So you need to make sure that you've got the dry side up and the gluey side on the back. If you feel it, you can feel the glue, like a little bit stickier on the other side. And you must use a dry iron. It's quite tempting to blast the steam on. You just need to put a dry iron over it. And it will shift a little bit, but you can just trim that up at the end. And you want to try and get it so that you haven't got any little creases or puckers on your good side. But you still need, as I just mentioned, you still need your fabric to have a little bit of give. You're not trying to make it really, really stiff. You're just trying to make it firm enough to hold a new shape. The next stage of preparation is quite critical because you're going to try and get a very unusual shaped piece of fabric to fit in a very unusual shaped top. So we need to make sure that we're using the same seam allowance so that this fits exactly in the air. And this is where I'd get out my trusty seam gauge and make sure that when I sew there, I know that I'm going to use a 1.5 seam allowance on my shoulder, so I will get the same shoulder allowance on both the outer garment and the facing, and that's what's going to help all your facings fit together properly. If not, you'll end up with things a little bit twisted because you'll be trying to force the facing into a shape that's not the same size. So I've got a complete facing unit attached to the shoulders. I finished the edge with an overlocker, but you could use pinking shears. You could just turn it under once and sew a straight stitch all the way around the bottom, so you get a neat finish. I've only done the outer edges. These inner edges will be enclosed anyway, or I might neaten those once I've attached it. It's really important when you cut the pattern out, you can't see them on here, but I've got little nicks in it, little notches, because I've got to match this now to the shape of the top, and I'm going to match the notches so that I can ease the curves in the right place, and then I can let it sit flat in other places. So I'm going to pin all of the facing into the top, and then we can sew around, and then I can tell you a little bit about understitching. So here's your next bit. It's a little bit critical, this bit. This is where you use your notches to sew to match up all of your seams. So first of all, you're going to match the shoulder seams, and you're going to put your facing right side to right side of the fabric, and then you're going to pin all the neck together, and then you're going to go around the back, and then you're going to do the arm. So you're going to sew around the neck, around the arms, and then I'm going to show you how to pull these back panels through the facing, and that's what turns everything the right side out. I've sewn around the neck, and now I'm going to clip the curves. I'm not going to snip the seam, not like I've ever done that before. I'm going to take some little, it's quite a steep curve there for the sort of square neckline, so I'm actually going to notch out a little bit there, because that needs to curve a long way, not just a little snip. These Janome scissors are really sharp on the tip, so they're really good. There is less risk of snipping through because the tips are so sharp that I can just do that. I'm going to do this side as well. I'm going to take some little V shapes out, like that, not going into the seam line. And then I'm going to flip this over and give it a press, and then I'm going to take you back over to the machine so that you can see how to understitch. And some people sort of think they will skip understitching, but understitching helps this facing to stay on the inside and lie flat. So you're going to make sure that this facing doesn't roll out so that it shows on the front. You want that stiffened piece just to give structure to the front. Okay, so this side is the shoulder, the outer shoulder. This side is the facing, and we've got the stiffener on it. So I'm going to sew 2 millimeters along here. There's no seam allowance here. The seam allowance is all pushed that direction towards the facing. So all of the layers are pushed this way. And so when we sew it, we're sewing all of those thick layers down, leaving this outer side just floating on its own. And because it's got that facing behind it, this will sit really nicely. Okay, it's the big reveal. So I'm going to pull, I've gone round the neck, clipped the curve, understitched it, and then I've gone around the curve of the arms. You can't do the arms until you've done the understitching, otherwise you can't get to do the understitching. And then you're going to pull the backs and all the facings through the shoulder seam. So your shoulder seams will be completely encased because they'll be on the inside. That's why you wanted to really match up your notches and shoulder seams really carefully, and then this is going to pull through, and then you'll see. Okay, so you've got your shoulder seam, your arm, the other arm, and the place for the button loop there. Okay, so you've got the button loop around there, and I'm going to pull through the other side and press it. Okay, all the facings are sewn down and pressed, and the final stage was to sew down the side seam, and you sewed down the facing, down the side seam, and then flip it in. And so some people just hand sew on the end there, but I like to sew a straight line as a stitch in the ditch right down that seam line, and then there's no fear of the facing flapping out, and it does make it slightly easier to iron, because when you've washed it, that will all stay attached to the top rather than flapping out. So I'm going to stitch in the ditch, which means I'm going to sew all the way through to the other side in that seam allowance. Go really slowly so that I can get it right in the middle of that seam. So there we are, finished. I've just got to do the hem, but I thought I'd show it you. It's got some of the stuff material all the way around, which is linked below, and the pattern is linked below. I really like this neckline. It's a little bit different to other shell tops that I've made. There's 3 or 4 different neck types on this pattern, so it's really good for finding the style that you like. The bust starts to line quite flat on both sides, and I'm wearing it with the same stuff fabric. I use this to show an invisible zip on a tutorial, but I think it makes a really nice summer outfit. I've cut a 14, which I guess might be a touch too big, but I kind of like it for summer because it's not too tight. If you think you can have a go at darts, start looking on the Minerva website for the trends that go through on the feed, because you'll see all the different patterns that are featured, pattern of the day, patterns matched to different fabrics. So you might spot a pattern that's got a dart in and think, oh great, I can do that now, and then you can have a try. Thanks for watching. Call in again soon. Bye.